Hello, hello, good morning. Welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, awaken the consciousness. Good morning, Mr. Benny Mathers.
Hi there.
Hello.
Good to see your bright, shining, smiley face once again.
Thank you.
You're
You
welcome.
too.
Thank you.
And so, how was your week? How was the 4th of July?
It was pretty eventful. I mean, we stayed home. We went to a couple parties around the neighborhood. We kind of do that anyways because there's so much going on. We try to stay off the roads. I mean, we saw some major fireworks, of course, more than we chose to, but that's okay because it wasn't on our dime. I like that as well. Had the most amazing barbecue. My girlfriend's ex-husband actually invited us over to their place, and he broke out his new, I don't know if you're familiar with the green egg, but it is
No, I'm not.
the most amazing piece of hardware I've ever had food from. So it's basically a giant grill shaped like an egg. It's full ceramic, so it holds in the heat much better, and it gives a much better, grilling technique and style to your...
Wow.
I know, I don't want to bore everybody.
I'm sorry, but that's making my mouth water. The green egg.
Meat
I
talk
gotta check it out.
and
Yeah.
barbecue.
Barbecue talk.
All
Yeah.
right, it
I love it. That's great.
Mhm.
Well, it sounds like it was a good time.
It was.
Yep. And the fireworks on someone else's dime is a good idea.
And we stayed cool for the most part, even though after that we've seen the ramp of temperatures up here in the Pacific Northwest, and now they're starting to taper off, which is a good thing because I think we need to take a break. We're not too good around the heat around here.
No, we don't quite know what to do.
No, we get a little confused, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We do. I was talking to a lot of people about how to keep their dogs cool, that kind of thing, and making sure they put water out for the animals and stuff like that. I put out a little bird bath, I guess you'd call it. And I had the hummingbirds out there in the bird bath. I've got a little shaded area, and they were kind of hanging out there.
That's good.
So that was okay. I liked it.
They're having a little pool party.
Yeah, they were having a pool party on Loretta's deck.
Oh,
that's right.
You should make a little sign. A little sign, like cardboard sign, like, all hummingbirds.
Little tiny one.
Yeah, totally. Bingo. That's exactly where I was going to go with.
I love it. Thanks, Betty. I love checking in with you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I had a great time too, and I hope everybody stayed safe and sane, as they say, and onward and upward, as the saying goes. Anyway, I'm the owner of Reiki Oasis, located right here in the greater Seattle area. You can find out more about me at ReikiOasis.com and find out what is coming up the month of July. My Temple of the Divine Feminine, I think, is the 21st. And oh boy, lots going on because we're going to be celebrating the second full moon in Capricorn. And right now we're on the other side of that new moon in Cancer and on our way to the second full moon in Capricorn. The full moon in Capricorn is encouraging us. And remember, we're in bookends of full moon in Capricorn, one in June, one in July. But it's encouraging us to revisit childhood themes and patterns, especially the stories we've been telling ourselves about who we are, our limitations, and our capabilities, and move forward from a more adult, empowered place. With certain planets retrograde, you may be finding yourself looking at past relationships and experiences and doing what you can to heal the pain and rewrite the stories. Be careful not to make things so that you are always the hero and the heroine of everything, or maybe you should do that. I don't know. We are all co-creating, and these are important times to actively write a new, more grounded and peaceful narrative, especially for the weeks and months ahead. We so often carry the old stories of our life around with us. And I don't know, I think it's a good idea to just unfold that. And especially because my guest today's a writer, maybe she can give us insight into how to rewrite our stories and change our lives. So good energy for that. And then today, July 11th, Venus enters passionate Leo, making a fantastic time to put ourselves out there, focus on our appearance, and embrace a more fun and playful attitude. Channel this vibrant energy by spending time with those who bring out the best in you, and allow yourself to feel pampered and beautiful, and let your playfulness shine through. That Leo energy is like, a big cat, right? Also today, July 11th, the sun and Saturn form a trine alignment, enabling us to be productive and make progress with greater ease. This is an excellent time to tackle challenging projects and get things done. With Saturn currently in retrograde, this alignment may also offer more insights into the quote, homework that the planet of karma has assigned us. What themes are showing up for you? Take a look. Personally and collectively, it affects all of us. Friday, July 12th, Venus in Leo opposes Pluto in Aquarius, creating a potentially challenging dynamic that can highlight power struggles in our lives. Where are we exerting too much control? Where are we being controlled and maybe overly controlled? We may feel the push and pull in our lives and relationships. Whatever comes to the top, try to step out of your ego and align with your heart. Stand in your power without engaging in power struggles. That's kind of a challenge. Whoa, we really have to get to know ourselves. And then Monday, July 15, Sun squares Chiron and the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So this Mars-Uranus conjunction is building energy toward its exact alignment on July 15th. This highly volatile alignment calls for caution. Avoid angry people. Don't force issues or machinery because they might break. It's kind of a breaking point. Be especially careful if you have authority issues or there's issues in authority. However, this is a powerful time to take action to revolutionize your life and ensure your actions align with your values. Many astrologers are warning of the clash in the skies, and even Vedic astrology speaks of the fixed star Algon that brings destruction and even war. So use this time to work through your anger issues and find the tools to deal with things in a more harmonious and healing way. We all need to learn to stand up for ourselves and what we believe, but many sacred texts, such as the Bible, mention a time when we will actually beat our weapons into plowshares and work together. I think that means that maybe there could be peace. Maybe we could figure out how to get along. I invite everyone to work through their differences, relax your jaw, let love, and big God, not little gods, help you and all of us. And as Chiron prepares to go retrograde at the end of the month, and Chiron is talks about healing, July 15th is a potent day to reflect on your healing journey since December of last year. What's been going on? What have you been working on? What did you think you got done with and it came back around again? You've likely experienced significant growth and healing since then. So use today's energy to acknowledge your progress and feel supported in taking new steps in your healing journey. And if there's a new step you feel called to take, as they say, seize the day. Today is the day to do so. And I really encourage everybody to lighten up a little bit. There's lots of heaviness out there. Lighten up. I mean, we do have beautiful weather. Get outside, always get outside, hug a tree, hug each other, and have some fun. So on that sort of a beautiful platform, I have a wonderful guest today. You're going to love her. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Gabrielle Myers. Gabrielle is a distinguished writer, a professor, and a chef whose work spans memoirs, poetry, and culinary arts. Her memoir, Hive-Mind, published in 2015, chronicles a profound journey of love, awakening, and loss on an organic farm. Excuse me. Gabrielle's poetic voice continues to resonate through her works, including Too Many Seeds, her latest collection, Break, Self, Feed. And as a farm to fork columnist for Inside a Sacramento magazine, Gabrielle connects us to the earth and its bounty through her beautiful words. We're thrilled to explore her literary journey, her connection to nature, and her culinary expertise. And in her book, Break Self Free, Gabrielle Myers explores eroticism and relationships with powerful, evocative language. using poetry to address our ecosystems, their threats, and potential solutions through nourishment and breaking barriers. The collection urges us to repurpose our energy from preparing for ruin, to embracing growth and potential. Gabrielle asks, what will we make of us here? As the poems weave lessons from the earth's cycles of growth and decay. This collection delves into longing, transformation, and the quest for wholeness, resonating with the song of us, me, you. Gabrielle Myers, I'm so glad to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you, Loretta. I'm very happy to be here.
From my heart to yours, joy, joy, joy. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I am so interested in knowing more about you, but before I dive into that, I'm just going to ask you a general question. What are you most excited about right now?
That's a good question. I'm excited about all the potential that's out there for us. Going back to what you were discussing earlier, I think there is a lot of potential for humans to begin to move together in new ways that we couldn't even imagine in the past. I think we're all so infiltrated with negative past tales and narratives of our experiences together and with our perceived enemies. And I think there's a lot of unbroken ground that we're going to start to dig into and explore in the coming years where we can unify in some way, not in a cheesy way.
Yeah.
Like we'll probably have our conflicts. We are human beings. But I think we're going to figure out how to navigate the world, which is the space that we inhabit in some way, in a more, I don't know, want to say collaborative or less harmful way to the earth and to each other. So I'm really excited about that.
You know, your energy is so organic. I love it so much. I feel like you're a plant growing over there. Something's going on. I have a question. These questions are just kind of coming to me. What does the earth have to teach us about what you just said, like about the cycles of things and how to get along and how to grow and evolve into something? What does the earth have for us?
I think if we kind of pay attention to the plants around us and the animals as well, but I'm thinking more like in terms of like aspens working together as a network, right? There's not just like an aspen and it dies, it's all connected. So when one dies and it throws up, the whole colony throws up another aspen and they're connected underground. They kind of speak together in ways that I don't think we fully understand yet. But there's a communication happening between the different trees that are in the same area. And there's that like physical connection. I think also mycelia, if you look at like mushrooms and fungi, and the networks that they send out really across the whole earth in multiple different environments, whether they're harsh or like kind to uh, animals and plants around it, they still survive and they still communicate and they literally are connected. And I think that as humans, we think, especially maybe in America, we're really like driven home this idea of independence and sovereignty, and nobody can tell me what the F to do and yada yada. But I think really actually we are much more connected than we can even imagine. I think that maybe COVID and the experience of sheltering in place and the disconnection that a lot of people felt started to awaken that awareness in us. And I think there's much more there that we can kind of dig into and unearth, and maybe even like, I don't know, I want to say capitalize on because that's very, I don't know, capitalistic concept, but we
Yeah.
can
Well,
mine it,
maybe it's
we
in
can
this
explore
positive
it,
capitalism. Yeah.
we can dig into it, right? And maybe that's what we need to emphasize rather than this like disconnection and this perception of like, well, Russians are my enemy or, people on this side, whatever. There's always it seems like a lot of times we're focused on the opposition and this like disagreement, and we focus on maybe the conflict and the disruption. But I wonder what would happen if we moved in the other direction. And
Yeah.
I think we need to do that, honestly. At
Oh, I
this
love what you said. I'm resonating with it. I want you to just keep talking about. I want to make this comment. This idea of the rootedness, right? Or that the aspens, they shoot up another one. Like, I love this so much. Sometimes we talk about grounding ourselves or putting our roots down into the earth, and I'm like, well, Gabrielle, so if we go down there far enough, are we all rooted, right? This kind of an idea. And the world is diverse. It's full of all kinds of things. And yet, here it is. I'm also thinking about how you're a chef. And while you were talking, I was thinking, you take this mushroom or that plant, or you figure out how to put it all together into a delicious culinary delight, as they say. Maybe you could come up with a recipe for what you just said for humanity,
That's a
right?
good idea. I like that. I'm working on it. I'm working on a new poetry manuscript. I was actually just working on that this morning. That really digs into those themes. And so that's a good idea. I like that, a recipe. Because well, we all need like recipes to follow. I'm an English teacher, that's my day job, or I'm very passionate. I love teaching. And so I create like a recipe to the body paragraph, which is like a structure that students can follow to write the academic, body paragraph that will get them A's, no matter where they are. And so I like the idea of the recipes because we need a step-by-step process. A lot of ideas are like, ooh, up here, but like, okay, well, like, what does that actually mean for me in my life? And like, how do I approach that? And people need something tangible, like do this, then that. So I love that idea.
Yeah, they really do. How did you get into writing?
So I've been writing, gosh, since I was a little girl. I actually have dyslexia, auditory dyslexia, and I really struggled to learn how to read. I remember in first grade, I was in the lowest reading group. I was the only person in it. It was so low. Nobody else was as low as me. And I had to work with tutors. And my dad, who has auditory dyslexia, really
Oh,
taught me how to read how he reads. And it's funny because I think of him as like the best reader I've ever met. And so like his love of reading and his like retention of what he read, he kind of showed me how to navigate with the dyslexia to dig into a text and really connect with it. And that actually helped me fall in love with reading. And I think as you fall in love with reading and you read throughout the years, you tend to fall in love with writing as well because you want to give voice to your thoughts and your feelings. And so I started writing in like seventh or eighth grade. I wrote several poems. I have them in a little bound book my mom has sent me recently. And it just kind of went from there. I got lucky along the way. My sister was a bookworm, like the bookworm. And so she like would read to me when I was younger, and that always made, I think, reading hold a mystery. And then she was also would write a lot of fiction is what she tends to write, and I tend to do poetry and memoir. And so kind of she fostered that love. And then I was in high school. When I was in high school, I had the best English teacher ever, Rhoda Truebroth, and I was able to do an independent study with her in addition to my normal studies. And so I wrote basically autobiographical essays, stories for her. And then also we studied actively poetry and fiction. And so I really was able to immerse myself in that world. And then it's something I just continued. I had a dead period in my life with the writing, at least when I was cooking for a living in my 20s mostly. And I wasn't really reading or writing a whole lot. Mainly, I was working a lot of hours in restaurants and exhausted and just involved in other things. But I really missed it and I wanted to come back to it. And so I had a pivotal moment where it was like we get off at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And normally what we do is we, go out and drink and hang out, smoke cigarettes. It was back in the day, do other
right.
things.
Yeah.
There came a point where I was trying to get away from that lifestyle, and I picked up a book called Love Medicine by Louise Erdrich, who is one of my favorite writers, period. She's a brilliant poet. She's really unrecognized, I think, as a poet and also a fiction writer, very powerful writer. And I read Love Medicine, and I was thinking, if anybody could do anything in life, it would be to write a book like that people can connect with, that spans beyond like our lives and our stories, but speaks to something greater where everyone can kind of find a place in, and we can see through her character's eyes in such a way that empathy really is such a powerful experience that transforms us all as we're reading it. And so be able to do that, I thought, wow, that's like a life's work. And so that made me really want to start to reimagine my life and what I was capable of. I was working in a wonderful farm to table restaurant, authentic Italian cuisine, we make pasta fresh every day, sauces from scratch, get whole hogs in, break them down, make sausage and salami. And I loved what I did. And I love the people I worked with. I worked with like some of the best people in the whole world, like the best chef, Paul Canales, Paul Bertoli, Ayako, one of my good friends, Carol, Aaron, all these wonderful people, Brian, like that I'm still connected with. But the work itself for me wasn't as fulfilling, I think, as writing and teaching can be. And so I just started to move in a different direction at that point in my life and started to write again and really kind of connect with that part of myself. And the rest is really history. The writing actually led me to teaching when I was in grad school at UC Davis. There was an opportunity to teach. So we didn't pay tuition basically. And I was said, yes, sign me up because I was line cook you really or nothing, basically. And so through that, I fell in love with teaching. So it's like one thread often leads to another. If you follow a positive thread that you feel confident in, I think usually it will yield to the next step, and the next step kind of unfolds before you in life, even though you might
Yeah.
not be able to see it when you're beginning that journey.
I love your journey. And I agree with you. I like what you said. Follow the positive threads. Yeah, follow those positive threads. Um, I'm an avid reader. I've always been a reader, and one of the things, like, I really encourage people to read to each other. Read to your children, even read to your lover, read to them, right? And I just think that's great. I want to know though, how did you, because you tried writing some other stuff, but you ended up in poetry. So talk to me a little bit about poetry and I'm going to say the advantages of it.
I love poetry. It was my
Uh-huh.
first love. Well, I studied, I guess I shouldn't say it was my first love. I wrote autobiographical writing in high school, like I was saying, but in college, I really dug into poetry. And that was really what I tended to write the most of. And throughout my life, I have written a lot of memoir. I love memoir. I love that space personally. Fiction, I'm just not, I don't have the mind for that. I respect people that do it. It's every time I try to write fiction, it ends up being about what's actually happened. And little too much. So it ends up being basically a memoir or an autobiographical piece. But with poetry, what I love about it is it's a snapshot. I think of poetry and photography as really having a lot of connections, and I love photography. I'm, really into that as well. But with poetry, it's like capturing a moment in time that spans beyond the physical limits of time and space, and it speaks to something like I like to say beyond that. Often it I think is pushed out of us in terms of there's like this rupture between us and the world around us, this conflict that we want to kind of explore and find our way through. And I think poetry captures that like that without offering too much commentary that dilutes the experience, and it brings the reader full force just for that little moment. But look through that little window, what's happening in somebody else's life or at this moment in human history, and it can be a really powerful experience. I think poetry too now has so many wonderful advantages for us. I think so many of us spend maybe a little bit too much time here and on social media, and so we have really short attention spans. Maybe it's just the way that life is for us here in 2024 with so much going on. And we're, often we tend to not, I don't think have, we don't tend to have peaceful lives. We tend to have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Many people are working, multiple jobs, or, they have kids and they're going to school, or they're like pulled multiple ways. And I think that poetry is a wonderful space for us where we can connect and explore the written word at brief intervals. Right. So poems tend to be short. There are book length poems, definitely out there, very famous ones like the Odyssey or the Golden Gate. But I think that most poems tend to be short and sweet, and it's something that you can, read 1 to 5 on your cell phone in the morning, go off on your lunch break, maybe read another 2 or 3, at night, read
Right.
another 2 or 3, and it's not like you have to go back and reread what you just read, right? You can just pick it up and go from there. So it's wonderful, I think, moving forward for, like, that kind of short attention spans we have, but to still, find enrichment through the written word and through connecting with that,
You know, I like to use, like, your book of poetry, like, take this for what it is. But I sometimes like to just hold your book and just go, okay, so what will really inspire me, and just open it up.
Mhm.
And I have to tell you, that's kind of amazing what pops out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, That is like exactly it. And I love poetry for all of the reasons that you said. And also because for me, it's also visual. There's an emotional response that I get just by how you have structured it on the page, or the way that you have the lines made up. You're the one that understands that better than I, but how do you use, I guess you might say, form along with it to create that emotional response? And how easy is that for you to do? Is it difficult? Like, I was really I'm a musician, right? So I was looking at it kind of like cadence and theme and tempo and pauses and stuff like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for poetry, it's not easy, and it's hard to find, I think, the right line breaks, and then also to play with the spacing on the poem. And so there's this wonderful essay by Robert Haas, who was a former poet laureate and taught at UC Berkeley for a while, about this idea of breath in poetry. And it's, I think, similar to music, even though I'm not a singer, I don't know a whole lot about it, but this idea of the line as a length of breath, right? Or you're approaching your line breaks, like there would be a stop and breath, or you take a breath in before reading the next one. And so really playing with that is important. And it's a little challenging because everyone has their own reading voice, right?
Yeah.
And their own internal reading voice.
Yeah.
But to play with that in a way that seems right to you, it's like you're endlessly fiddling. As I always said, I'm working on a new manuscript, and I play with lines. I don't know if you guys can even see this, but
Yeah.
I play with like different breaks. And then what happens when I tab it in once or twice, like, because there would be a longer break then, or when you do punctuation at the end of the line, it changes that whole cycle. And so it's really challenging and rewarding. And another thing I love about poetry is it's like this little puzzle piece that you're endlessly fiddling with. We say it's done, when it's published and it's in book form, but really in our minds, we're still editing and shifting and changing things, right? It's like it's never done. I think for us, so it's really exciting, I think, to play with that part of poetry. More so, I think, with poetry, you play with the visual presentation in that genre more than you would in, say, fiction or nonfiction writing. Even though there
Yeah.
is space for that there, traditionally, people just don't do it. So.
Yeah. I think poetry, I don't know, it makes me pause and really consider, because the words to me are very selected. It's very selective and takes you, like, you really have a mastery, Gabrielle. I'm just telling people you should just go check Gabrielle Myers out and get her books, right? Get her poetry, and really take a look at it. And if you have not visited poetry for a while, you should come back, right? Come back and give it a go. Anyway, we're going to take a little station break. And this is Loretta Brown. I hope you're enjoying this wonderful interview with Gabrielle Myers, who's just, your energy is so lovely. I just can't hardly handle it. And we're going to take a little station break, and don't go away. We'll be right back.
All right, all clear.
When you're diagnosed with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, you just want to feel better. Steroids help get my symptoms under control, but they come with problems and long-term risks. I need to look out for my future health. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation changed everything. They encouraged me to take action and even helped me find a specialist. We now have a plan that works for today and tomorrow. Don't put off finding an answer. Spill your guts. Learn more at spillyourguts.org.
Did you know that Reiki healing can be done at a distance? It's true. So let Reiki Oasis focus powerful energy to help relieve your stress, grief, sadness, anger, and so much more. Convenient, personalized treatments at a distance can increase lightness of being. During your appointment, find a quiet place to lie down or sit to receive healing energies. If you want help with your dis-ease, visit ReikiOasis.com. Harness life's energy. Visit ReikiOasis.com today.
Time is funny. Sometimes it seems fast and other times slow. When it comes to time slots remaining on Alternative Talk 1150, time is running out. In fact, there are just a few primetime slots available. So if you want to host your own radio program, the time to call 425-653-1150 is right now. Nope, no time for excuses. Dial 425-653-1150 to find out how affordable it can be to host a radio show. Alternative Talk. We have an opportunity waiting just for you.
Seattle, Tacoma, Antwerp. That's right. We're streamed worldwide on our app and on the web at 1150kknw.com.
Yeah, you guys ready to come back? Sorry to interrupt. I got to bring you back on here. All right, stand by.
Welcome back to the original Loretta Brown Show with my guest, Gabrielle Myers, and she is an author, a poetress, I guess you might say, and a professor and a chef. And I want to remind people that these shows are archived. You can download them for free and listen to them anytime you want at KKNW 1150 AM archives for the original Loretta Brown Show. We're on iTunes, Podcast One, Spotify, X, Megaphone, YouTube. I know I left something out, but you get the idea. And please go and find the shows, download them, listen to them. Many, many wonderful people. And I wanted to just let people know that Gabrielle Myers, she has written beautiful poetry collections, Too Many Seeds, Break Self Feed, which is her newest one, I believe. And you've got another one coming out, don't you, Gabrielle?
I do. Yes, I have
Yeah.
points on the network, but that won't be published until fall of 2022.
Yeah. And I also want to say that that Gabrielle's poetry manuscripts have been finalists for the Catamaran West Coast Poetry Prize, the 42 Mile Press Poetry Award. And she has been praised by notable figures like former U.S. Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera. And Gabrielle's work blends postmodern naturalism with lush 21st century personal pointillism, leaving a lasting impact on readers. And so she's just a great, a really great, I really mean it. And before I bring you back on, I'm actually just going to jump in and share this. I was telling people in the first half of the show that, I just opened Gabrielle's book to see what speaks to me. And so this is the one that popped up, and it's called Be in Lust with Life. What part of us lingers and lunges like a fevered bat into a pepper plant shade as it unfurls verdant leaves? Fence planks protect us, pull us toward ourselves in unseen, uncharted ways. Keep a piece of ourselves that is a self to ourselves. Let it out, but never hold it out like a smacked palm. If necessary, retain who we are. We can always retreat into our stoic parts, release back to a previous shape, reform, resilient as dough, worked by tough hands. We have been worked by decades of gain and loss, hard work, meager wages, long hours, creating to be in lust with life, with existence, with rain's kiss and sun's benedictions. Whoa. Gabrielle, thank you for writing that for me. It's just so I could read it this morning, and it really spoke to my heart. And I went, oh, it's so full of exactly what we go through, right? It's so full of it. So, yeah, makes me speechless. Just to give everybody a taste, and Gabrielle is going to read some of her own poetry at some point. I wanted to ask you, talk about the significance, you've kind of hit on it a little bit, of the first person plural of we, right? And the way that you write your poetry in that fashion. So just talk to that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I hope that invites the reader in. I think often when we write, we feel like we're writing from our own individual perspective. And I would say, well, yes, of course, that's true. We can't help but write through that filter because we're humans and a human brain. But I think that when we're writing poetry, we're actually diving into, in some ways, that collective, right? That voice that really isn't just about us and our experience, extends way beyond that in such a profound way. And so I wanted the we to represent that. Also, a lot of the poems deal with the wish to join and connect with another, but then sometimes the resistance or challenge that happens with that. through like personal relationship conflicts, but also just through life's, crap that gets in the way, I think. And so I wanted the we to really be a force that was present throughout the manuscript as the poems dive in and out of discussions about relationships, connection, and joining, and then expand way beyond that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk about the themes that you have in your book, Break Self
Mhm.
Freed? Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of them follow the trajectory of a relationship from the beginning through moments of passion and challenge and conflict to the ultimate kind of end and rupture of the relationship and the division, separation. And so that's one theme. But that's just like, I'd say, one level of it. Another level is also looking at the natural world that surrounds us. When I was writing these poems, I was living mostly in Sacramento, and so an urban landscape, right in the heart of Midtown, and so a lot of the poems, I'd say, deal with the natural aspects of that environment, which is basically counter to what a lot of people think. They think, "Oh, inner city, what nature is there? You have to go out, like, to the middle of the mountains." But
Right.
I'd say that's not true. There's actually, like, hummingbirds, and there's, like, the backyard gardens, and there's sycamore trees and doves that your neighbors feed and so forth, and so those really, like, infuse the poems on another level. There's also, basically in California, and I think probably in most of the Western United States, we're dealing with a lot of climate challenges, and our ecosystems are under threat from climate change, and we're dealing with a lot of forest fires, basically. Now, I know it's complicated what's causing that and yada yada. Is it
Yeah.
deforestation or is it lack of deforestation or what? Uh, but it's happening. Whether every summer we have horrible forest fires, and we have to deal with what they cause in our lives. And so in Sacramento and in the Central Valley of California, it basically sucks in the smoke from all the fires that are happening in the foothills and the mountains and left and right of us. And so a lot of the poems kind of deal with living under that pressure of the smoke and the congestion, but not thinking, oh my God, the world's over. What are we going to do? So many of us fall into this, like, the world's screwed. We're all going to die. We've gone too far. We've destroyed it way too much. And like, maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, and maybe that's an the poems don't speak to the devastation. They actually speak to, like, through that devastation that might awaken us to something else. And so the poems really focus on the something else in the sense of, like, hope and shift and change. And as part of shift and change, it's not as simple as, like, oh, bliss and joy and great things are going to happen. Like, sometimes there has to be a downward kind of spin, or a darkness to make us see our pathway through the smoke. And so the poems really speak to that, like, alternate pathway and maybe a different narrative that we can spin for ourselves, instead of devastation or destruction. Maybe, like, through that, just as, like, compost has to do some shifting and changing of the material to turn it into gold for plants to feed and accelerate and rise again. I think for humans as well, there's that pathway.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. What you said, I that goes along so well with what I was saying earlier in the astrology report too. Like, we can rewrite our stories, but we do have to go through that darkness, like through the rich, pungent darkness of the earth. Like, I can even smell it sometimes. I was talking to someone the other day, and nobody likes talking about death and grief, and yet it is a part of the great cycles of things. And it's some of the greatest initiations that we can go through, where we have loss, but then we can find out how we come out the other side and organically grow. And out of that compost, as you say, or out of those ashes, there's always those plants trying to come up, right? There's always that new thing coming. And yeah, I also am the proverbial hope girl. I've always called myself, I've realized it about myself, like, no, there's always hope. People are like, Loretta, give up. I'm like, No, right, right. So lust for lies, the poem I read that spoke to my heart today. Do you have a poem you would like to share with the audience?
I do, yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. I love it when people that write stuff read their own stuff. Yeah.
So I have this poem here,
Okay.
and it's called Spring Mostarda Making. So this is from my manuscript Break Self Feed, which will be published through Finishing Line Press. It's coming out in just a couple of weeks at the end of July. So please check it out.
Yeah.
Spring Mostarda Making. And so this essentially, on some levels, is about making mostarda, which is an Italian sweet and sour sauce. But as I think you'll see as I read it, it's about much more than that. Spring mostarda making. Spill yellow seeds like loose marbles to toast against hot steel. Send them to swell in plum juice. Expand with balsamic's sweet acid, condensed by summer's sun, by light filtered through smoke. Ignite spice, tang, tingle. Sense how firm greenness softened to purple on weighted stems. Our orchard's branches curled in drought's evaporative pool. Our wells emptied themselves to keep us full. Our apricots, plums, figs wrinkled under heat's weight, under drought's pressure point. Now our tree buds tumefy, tent out broad leaves. Flower after flower unfolds to rain rivers. Roots expand beyond our seasonal streams, reach out and down for sustenance, ready to rise above coming desiccation. Savor each season's water concentration. Lick each year's deluge. Taste mustard's pop, its thrust. Swirl sweet plum sacks, vinegar's sharp clearing, oil's cure rounding us, a filling.
Wow. I would love you to read that 10 more times and pause. That is rich and full. There's so much depth to that. And also, my mouth is watering. When can I have that? Wow. Thank you, Gabrielle. Talk about the process of writing something like that and the challenges of it. Just, yeah, give us a little advice. I'm also thinking people listening, many people listening are writers or budding writers or might want to try to tackle poetry, right? Just, yeah.
So I think with poetry, I think with any type of writing, sometimes people wait to be inspired. And I would say that's the wrong way to do it. I think make writing a practice. And if you do it every day or as much as you can on a daily basis, good things will come out. I think when we sit down to write, we never know what we're going to write about. And if you do, maybe that's not the best pathway. It's best to not know. And then you just start to write. You could use a line from another poetry book to inspire you, or a newspaper headline, or look out the window and write about what you see. And so for me, for that, it was one of those daily practice poems. And I was just writing about what I saw around me, and was thinking about mustard because it was everywhere. It was blooming at the time of year in Northern California, and I'm sure in other places. It just covers fields, vineyards in between the wine vines. There's mustard all over. It's just like, oh, you can see sometimes yellow mustard flowers, and a lot of people think they're invasive. And apparently, I found out they're bad for vineyards a few months ago, but they look beautiful to me. And I was thinking about, I love food and I'm always hungry. So I'm always thinking about food. And when I used to work in restaurants, we would make this mostarda sauce. I worked in it mostly farm to table Italian restaurants. And so I was thinking about that and the mustard and the gifts. But then where I think this probably happens no matter where you live, but at the time I was staying in the foothills of California. And so there were a lot of issues with water and drought. The last 2 years that's been alleviated a little bit, but I wrote most of these poems in the time when we were still really under severe drought and we were just starting to get some atmospheric rivers, but they weren't enough to end the drought situation. So there was that conflict as well, right? Thinking about like nourishment and production, and then also what's happening, in terms of if you don't have water, you can't really do a whole lot, and not a whole lot happens in nature either, right? And so I was thinking about that, like resistance and challenge. And then the sensuousness really of like food is something I always come back to. It's one thing, I love about, I think as humans, we're so lucky that we can eat, and it's not
Yeah.
just like we're eating to
Yeah.
survive. It's like this pleasurable ecstatic experience, right? And just eating a raisin can be like the most profound connection with the world possible if we approach it like that and like, pay attention to what we're eating. And so I was thinking about that as well. And then you just write, like normally I just write something and it's in my journal. I have a journal now that's been going on since 2022 that has like 400 pages or something in it. And sometimes it's like crap, I know, like, half of it, not even half of it, but maybe 10% of it's good. Right. But then I always comb through my journals and then I put things in a working document, possible new manuscript. And then I work on the poems basically obsessively, uh, edit them on the computer as much as I can. And then when I feel like I really don't know how to make this one stronger, I print it out and then I like comb through it with a pen and read it aloud, think about the formatting and think about the word choice, cut a lot of words out, right? Because especially in poetry, you were mentioning this earlier, right? Every word always counts in everything you write, but with poetry, like
Yeah.
a misplaced article, like an extra a or the can really get in the way of the reading experience. Capitalization or lack of it, punctuation or lack of it, all those things you kind of agonize over, or maybe not agonize over, but endlessly fiddle with, I think, as a poet, and kind of play with the way things look on the page and so forth. And then also too, it's important to think about the order in a poetry manuscript, and thinking about maybe disrupting. I think, sometimes as poets, or as writers, we tend to fall into writing about similar topics in poem after poem. At least, I know I do. So I try to
Yeah.
play with it a little bit and like disturb that, fiddle with the word choice, like spread things out a little bit, create variation for the reader as they're going through that manuscript. And then you keep editing and agonizing and working through like 15 drafts, right? And so forth. And then eventually, hopefully it gets published, it's out in the world and it becomes this book, right? And you play with it less because you're moving on to other things.
I I really appreciate that. It's a creative flow, right? And what I'm hearing you say is you're always in it. You're never really out of it, right? It just becomes a part of what's going on. And I also love this idea of just start writing. To stop trying to edit everything. I had some people coming to me the other day going, "I can't find my voice," and I'm like, "Just write. You'll find it. You're trying to find your voice before you write is like it just do it. Get into the energy of it or the flow of it or the thing of it. Um, yeah, endlessly editing. I love the word agony.
Agony and joy. It's joy when you're like, all right, that's pretty good. And then you go back to it 2 weeks later, you're like, oh no.
No. That's agony right there. I also am a foodie. I came to Earth for the food, and I just love it. I just like I'm like you. Like I'll take a bite and I'm like, oh my goodness, and I love this idea of, oh my goodness, it's a raisin. Oh, right. Thank you so much for that. I just think it's great. Um, yeah, I think it's great. What advice would you give your younger self and why?
I would say, Uh, well, that's a good question. I think as we get older and we move through life, become better at reining in our negative habits and we can focus more on our positive habits and like kind of get our crap together. I don't want to use a bad word, but
No, that's fine. That's a fine word.
like, or shit, right? Like get our stuff together. And so I spent a lot of time, I think, mostly in my 20s, kind of not goofing off, but I was like a party girl. I like to enjoy life. And, when I thought as a writer, that meant trying everything and doing all these different things. And some of them maybe weren't the smartest things safety wise, or in terms of like my productivity. And so I wish I hadn't like necessarily engaged with that as long as I did. I feel like our habits create our life really and our outcomes. And so now I'm pretty good about, I know like what I need to do and I do it. And I'm actually really productive with that. But, if I think about all those lost years, I was talking about this with my friend, if I could just been productive and wrote every day through that time, it would have been fine. But, you know, I didn't. So
Well,
I wish honestly,
yeah,
like looking back,
yeah.
I had done, I think also too, it's hard as our writers, sometimes for us to believe in ourselves. And I think that it's like you don't need somebody else to tell you that you're a writer and you're good and you should invest in your habit or in that, like in that developing that skill. But I think a lot of times that unfortunately is what we fall into. And so I wish I had just believed in myself and put in, because to when you believe in yourself, you put in the time and then you get results, right? It's like this thread. But sometimes when you're wavering and like, not sure of yourself and you have lack of self-confidence with certain things and you don't invest in yourself and then the results don't come, right? So it's just like leading with the faith that there's something there and keep working on it and kind of ignore the external validation. I think that we often fall into. I don't know if it's like our society, if it's just human nature, right? We want other people to say we're good and we're talented and yada yada, but all of that is kind of irrelevant. Honestly, I've known a lot of people that are very talented as writers, but they haven't really done a whole lot with it because they let the daily practice go and then they don't do it, right? And so really it's like coming back to that. If you do it every day, something's going to happen. Whatever you can do. If you're editing something, maybe you can't think of a new thing to write, but if you're going back and you're editing and you're playing with your stuff or you're reading actively, because reading fuels your own writing and it gives you a dialogue, to engage with. I think like if you do that, wonderful things will come. But really, so much in life is about like our habits and our approach to our daily lives.
Wow. Consistency is what I'm hearing, and the daily practice, being immersed in that energy. I so agree with you. And also so many people, yeah, they're held back by this idea. Well, am I good? Am I good enough? I have to be so good, or yeah. And it's like, I don't know, everybody's unique, everybody's individual, and do it, and then something will come from it. You just put that in. I think it's really, really good advice. It also brings into focus for me and probably for the listeners that it doesn't really matter what you're doing. You could be over here working for, Amazon or whatever, but you're still going to be doing your writing over here, and let something grow, let something reveal itself there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. I think in the way that things are set up right now, at least in America, is most of us have to work a job. And as a writer, it's really almost impossible to support yourself with just your writing. There are a few people that do it, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but I would say for most artists, for most writers, and so forth, often we need to do something else to have health insurance, to have retirement, to be able to have a shelter above our heads. And so it's important to not let that distract you from your goals as an artist and as a writer, and carve out the time however you can for it, right? So I have a lot of students that work at Amazon warehouses, night shifts, or
Yeah.
I teach in the Central Valleys. A lot of people are working on at packing warehouses, and they have really challenging shifts, and they have kids, and they have a lot going on. But every day I see them make school happen, right? And like they're
Yeah.
there doing the work, right, to the best of their abilities. And I think, wow, that's like so inspiring, right? If people can
Yeah,
do
it is.
from any situation, like we can all find time to write for 30 to 45 minutes a day, maybe more, right? So
Yeah, I say yes to that, and even if you're doing it for yourself, I'm a firm believer that creative part of us needs development. It needs an outlet, and a lot of people get burned out because they don't have any of that. It's me time. What does myself want to say and express to the world? Um, Man, we're down to like the last little tiny bit of the show. That went by super fast, super fast. What do you traditional question? What do you hope your readers will get from your writings? What do you hope the impact will be upon them? And where do people find you?
So to be in lust with life, I think to engage with that part of ourselves, right? To think about that like limitlessness experience where we're in flow and in lust with everything we see. I think that would be lovely if people could get that for my work. And then you can find my work. I'm available on Amazon. I have a memoir called Hive-Mind that's available on Amazon. And then I have that was published through Lisa Hagen Books back in 2015. And then I also have a poetry book, Too Many Seeds, published by Finishing Line Press. It's available via Finishing Line Press website. That's the best way to get that. I also have Break Self Feed, which will be released just at the end of July in 2024, available through Finishing Line Press as well. But those will all be available on Amazon, on Barnes and Nobles, basically distributed through Ingram, and anywhere you can find excellent books. You can also check out my website, where I have a little taste and videos of my poetry, articles on farm to table cuisine and producers in the Sacramento region at www.gabriellemyers.com. That's MYERS.com. And that's basically a nice place to land where you can find links to all my books and articles and so forth. So please check it out.
Check it out for sure. Gabrielle Myers, what a delight, and how refreshing to have you on the show today. And you're just the best. Thank you so much. Mr. Benny Mathers, thank you. And to everybody listening, yeah, let's go rewrite our stories. Let's write some poetry. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you, Loretta. Such a pleasure. Thank you,
Such a
Benny.
pleasure. Bye now.